Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Against the Odds. So last week, on our Against the Odds poll, we had an all Lorwyn tribal Against the Odds poll, featuring all the sweet tribes from Lorwyn in celebration of tribal themes returning in Ixalan, and in the end, it was elementals coming out on top. So if you want to vote for next week's deck, by the way, make sure to follow the link in the description of this video to the article. On the website down at the bottom, you'll find a poll featuring some sweet new options for next week. Anyway, since Elementals won, this week we are heading to Modern to play a deck I'm calling Elemental Breach, which I think is actually pretty spicy. I'm excited for this one. A quick reminder before we break down Elemental Breach for Modern. If you enjoy this deck and you enjoy Against the Odds in general, it would be amazing of you if you could take a quick second, click that subscribe button down in the corner of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. So, when it comes to building Tribal, I've talked about this before. It's actually going to be coming up in a video this weekend for Brewers Minute. I like to think of the tribe's competitive advantage. What is a reason to play this tribe? What does this tribe do better than anything else? And it's really weird with elementals, but elementals, their competitive advantage is fast mana. They have two different 2-drops in their tribe that let us add 2 mana, which is a massive burst of mana. These are like improvements on Birds of Paradise, and they ramp us super fast. They do have some restrictions, Smoke Braider and Generator Servant. Smoke Braider only taps for mana for elementals, and Generator Servant, of course, you gotta sacrifice it to get the mana. So it's more of a ritual type effect, although it has the upside that you give the creature you cast with it, if you cast a creature, haste, which is actually pretty relevant to our deck. So after realizing the elementals, what makes them good as a tribe is this fast mana, we kind of embrace the fast mana theme and are trying to use that to cheat a super big threat into play. The other thing that kind of reinforces this theme is the main lord of elementals, which is Incandescent Soulstoke. So Incandescent Soulstoke pumps our elementals, that's sweet. However, it also gives us another fast mana play. If it's on the battlefield, we can tap it, pay 2, and we just put an elemental into play with haste, and then we do have to sacrifice it at the end of the turn, but it's another way we can cheat like an 8 mana play onto the battlefield super early in the game. We can even do some really cool tricks. One of my favorite lines with this deck is we can play a Generator Servant on turn 2 and use the mana from Generator Servant on turn 3 to cast the Soulstoke, giving the Soulstoke haste, which lets us put a huge elemental into play for just 2 mana and hopefully win the game. So after realizing that it's all about fast mana, the next step was figuring out, well, what are we going to cheat into play? It obviously needs to be an elemental. What's the biggest, baddest, most game-winning elemental we can put into play? And here, I know it looks a little bit janky, but the answer is Liege of the Tangle. So an 8 mana 8/8, it has trample. The big deal is the ability. When it deals combat damage to a player, we can turn any number of lands, awaken them actually, into 8/8 elementals. So if we do this on turn 3 with that nut draw I was talking about, we hit our opponent for 8 with Liege of the Tangle, and our lands become 8/8s, which gives us 3 more 8/8s, which just lets us close out the game right away. So this is the big payoff. Everything in our deck is focused around winning with Liege of the Tangle. It's theoretically possible that we can win with elemental beats and pump them up with a lord, but for the most part, this is what we're focused on, and we have a bunch of different ways to doing it. So we can't just ramp into Liege of the Tangle. If we can play a Generator Servant on turn 2, a Smoke Braider on turn 3, on turn 4, we'll have 4 lands, we'll have 8 mana from our creatures, Generator Servant will give the Liege haste, so we just play this hasty Liege, hit our opponent, turn our lands into 8/8s, and one of the secrets of this is right now in Modern, tons of people are playing Fatal Push. That's like the premier removal spell. And Fatal Push doesn't do anything against Liege of the Tangle. Yes, it can get Path, but it can't get Lightning Bolt, it can't get hit by Fatal Push, so it's resilient to a lot of removal, and it dodges all the sorcery speed removal naturally, because we really just need to get in that one hit and make all of our lands into 8/8s, and that's all we need to win the game. So we can ramp into it naturally, we can also cheat it into play with Incandescent Soulstoke, or with Through the Breach. So since we're so focused on cheating Liege of the Tangle into play, we just want as many ways of doing this as possible. So So Soul Stoke is a great option, but it does die to removal that can slow us down. Through the Breach gives us a way that we can potentially just on turn 3 with Generator Servant, just breach a Liege into play, hit our opponent with Liege, turn all our lands into 8/8s and win the game that way. So that's kind of the plan of the deck. One way or another, we're trying to get in this hasty Liege of the Tangle as early as possible and trust that making all of our lands into 8/8s is going to be enough to win us the game. Liege of the Tangle is basically like our elemental Emrakul, the finisher that if we can get it on the battlefield, our opponent's going to have a really hard time winning. The rest of the deck features Flamekin Harbinger, which is actually really important because we only have the 4 Lieges of the Tangle to cheat into play, but Flamekin Harbinger actually kind of gives us 8 copies because we can play this for 1 mana, lets us tutor up a Liege of the Tangle, and then we can breach it into play, ramp it into play, however we're going to get it into play. The rest of our elementals, we have 4 Muldrifters, which work really well with our fast mana like Smoke Braider. We can play these like on turn 3, draw some cards, help us find our Liege of the Tangle, just a great value play. And then we have 1 Horde of Notions, mostly because our mana can support it. A 5/5 Vigilant Trample Haste for 5 is already pretty good, and then sometimes we get random value where we're getting back Muldrifters that we evoked, and it's also important to one of our sideboard plans. The non-elementals in the main deck, pretty straightforward. 4 lightning bolts for removal, 4 remands, just to kind of tempo and disrupt our opponent a little bit. The mana base, the key lands are Cavern of Souls, which lets us fight through counters, also fixes our mana for Horde of Notions, and Raging Ravine, which turns into an elemental, so it does benefit from our Soul Stoke as a lord. A bunch of fetch lands, and then a ton of different shock lands, which is important because while Cavern of Souls can help us cast our Horde of Notion, it doesn't help us activate our Horde of Notion, so we do need real mana of each color if we're going to get things back from our graveyard with Horde of Notion. And then just a few basic lands. As far as the sideboard, this is where the sweet Horde of Notion plan comes in. So if we run into control decks, maybe Tron decks, our plan is, apart from still Lieging, which is still great, we can bring in 4 Fulminator Mages and another Horde of Notions. And remember, we can tutor these up with our Harbinger and try to just landlock our opponent by destroying their land with Fulminator, pay 5, get back Fulminator, destroy another land, pay 5, get back Fulminator, destroy another land, and basically just lock our opponent's mana out of the game. Cloud Thresher, one of tutor target that's good for dealing with Lingering Souls in specific, can also be okay against like Spirits and some other fringe decks, but it's pretty much a sweet tutor target to deal with Lingering Souls decks. Then we have a bunch of graveyard hate, Relic of Progenitus, Surgical Extraction, Anger of Gods is a sweeper, negates for protection, a bunch of ways to deal with artifacts and enchantments, and that is Elemental Breach for Modern, and that's our Against the Odds deck for this week. So how good is this deck going to be? And I have no idea. I feel like it does a good job of embracing the competitive advantage of elementals, which, like we talked about, it's the fast mana. Is that going to be enough, though? Like, when you think of Through the Breach and cheating things into play, the first place my mind goes is Emrakul. Like, why would you ever cheat anything other than Emrakul into play if you had the option? But I think Liege of the Tangle is actually the right choice here, because we can cheat it into play with our elemental mana, which you couldn't do with Emrakul. So I don't know. I think the deck's going to be sweet. It's going to be fun. Just how good it's going to be, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Maybe it's better than I think. I mean, in theory, hitting someone with a Liege of the Tangle on turn 3, on turn 4, should win the game, unless they have Damnation in hand or something like that. The 8/8 lands are going to be enough to close it out the next turn, so, I mean, we'll have to see. Maybe this will actually work. I think it's going to be fun at the very least, and that's the most important thing. So, anyway, that's Elemental Breach for Modern. That's our Against the Odds deck for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy the gameplay videos, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, take a second and click that like button down below. It's a great way to help support the channel for free. And you can find the next video in the playlist right here.